The tweets. He is up early. He is watching the programs. Here's what he says. The failing at New York Times story is so totally wrong on transition. It's going so smoothly. Also, I've spoken to many foreign leaders. Then he tweets, I'm not trying to get top-level security clearance for my children. This was a typically false news story. And there's many more. This, in the context of the fact that last night Hope Hicks, his spokeswoman, said he's down for the night. Then he takes his family out to dinner at the 21 Club, leaving the press behind for the second time in, the week and a half that he's been president-elect. Why should this matter, Brian, to the American public?
Yeah, he might enjoy irritating the press by ditching us and heading out without us. But normally, presidents and presidents-elect travel with a protected press pool because those journalists are keeping track of the president on behalf of the American people. It doesn't matter that he went to dinner with his family, but it is good to know where he went, how long he was out for, and if anything happened while he was out. If anyone confronted him, if there were protesters, if there were fans. All of that information is helpful to know. These reporters keep track of the first draft of history, and that's why it matters not just for us, but for the viewers.
He seems to be having a struggle, the president-elect, separating what matters to him personally versus what matters to the position. These tweets this morning are irrelevant. He's good at pushing back against the media, but this is not what we've seen a president-elect do, and it's not because of Twitter as a mechanism of communication. It's what he focuses on. Is this something that's going to be a legitimate point of concern for his ability to focus on what he needs to going forward?
Well, it's been the same pretty much throughout the campaign. He's sort of a mercurial personality. He's not paying attention to big picture very often. The small picture gets his attention enormously. Plus, he's not particularly fact-based. So if something comes out and he says it isn't true, we don't know whether that's true or not, because we've seen him constantly saying things, that didn't happen, that didn't happen, that did happen.
So Chris's point about the office that he now holds versus the person, right? It was personal for him when he was the candidate.
Right.
Now he's the president-elect. It's a totally different ballgame.
It should be. You would think it's going to be. I think he's still kind of in that mode. We'll see if he can transition. Everything is about a transition now.
Right.
There's nobody ever been in this position before, I don't think, where he has had no experience at all in dealing with this.
And he's got people around him who don't have any experience.
And they have no experience.
So it makes the people you put around you very important.
Now I'm Pamela Brown in Washington and for Poppy Harlow, and you're live in the CNN newsroom on this Sunday. And new tonight, Donald Trump now claiming millions of people voted illegally in the election that he just won. The claim is part of a series of tweets the president-elect has fired off today over the effort to recount votes in some states. Trump writing, quote, in addition to winning the Electoral College in a landslide, I won the popular vote if you deduct the millions of people who voted illegally. It would have been much easier for me to win the so-called popular vote in the Electoral College, and that I would only campaign in 3 or 4 states instead of the 15 states that I visited. I would have won even more easily and convincingly, but smaller states are forgotten. These tweets were sent shortly before Trump boarded his plane to fly back to his transition headquarters in New York. And to be clear, there is no evidence to support the president-elect's claim. Let's bring in the panel to talk about all of this. Joining me once again, Ben Ferguson, CNN political commentator and host of the Ben Ferguson Show, as well as Mark Lamont Hill, CNN political commentator and host of BET News. He is also a professor at Morehouse College. I can see both of you are ready to go and share your opinions. Mark, I'm going to let you go first. You support Jill Stein. You supported her. She is, of course, leading this effort to recount votes in 3 states. By claiming millions of people voted illegally, did Donald Trump just help make her case for a recount?
Of course. Donald Trump essentially said this was not a free and fair election. He said people did not play by the rules, that illegal votes were cast. But he said, you know what? We don't have to count them because if they were all voting for my opponent. So it actually worked against, it didn't hurt me. It doesn't make a lot of sense. You can't say that the votes were illegal and then say that the election was free and fair. If the votes were illegal, let's count. Let's sift out the bad ones and find out who the real victor is here. And if it's Donald Trump, it's Donald Trump.
Okay, so Ben, on that note, how does Trump's team possibly argue against this recount when Trump is claiming not hundreds, not thousands, but millions of people voted illegally in the election?
Yeah, he should probably go into his Twitter account and hit the delete tweet button, and that would probably help things a lot right now. I don't think he's going to do that. Obviously, Donald Trump was fighting back. He shouldn't have used those words. There is nothing to describe or to insinuate that there was 1 million+ people that voted illegally in this election. For me, I'm ready to move on to the other things. What's going to happen on January the 20th? And I don't know why he would tweet this out, to be honest with you. But again, I go back to the main thing here. Mark understands it and agrees with me on this. There is nothing that's going to come out of this. It's meaningless. It is just a waste of time. It is a waste of resources. It is a waste of money. I think the Green Party, part of the reason why they did this is to get some relevancy after they had a really bad election and maybe bring more people into their party. And it's just, you know, you could even say they borrowed a line from Donald Trump. They pulled a publicity stunt and it worked.
Mark, you're shaking your head.
One, the elections didn't go poorly for the Green Party. They went poorly for the Democratic
Didn't go
Party.
well, Mark.
Well, Ben, we didn't go in. We weren't exactly sizing up drapes or booking Frankie Beverly for the inauguration. We knew we weren't going to win going into the election day. It was bad for Democrats, not bad for the Green Party. But the bigger question here is not whether or not we ultimately have a different president, although we could. I think the odds are against it. But the question is, did every vote count?
No. Let's not go there, Mark. Let's not go there, okay?
Hold on, Ben. But let me ask you this. With no evidence of hacking whatsoever, does this set a dangerous precedent? You know, after every election, should there be a recount like this now with this movement?
The problem with the question is that it presumes that this is the first time. It's not a precedent. Elections have been recounted many times, and this isn't the first time that a state has asked for a recount, whether it's a Senate election, whether it's a gubernatorial election, or whether it's a presidential election. And again, let's say that it turns out that of the 3 states that are being contested, one of them turns, and Donald Trump is still president. If you're in Wisconsin, don't you want to know you didn't vote for Donald Trump? If I'm in Wisconsin, and I darn sure want to know that my state didn't vote for Donald Trump. That matters for future elections. It matters for funding. It matters for campaigning. And it also matters because I don't want to live in a state that voted for Donald Trump. You know what I mean?
Are you going to move every time? Are you going to move every time you don't get your way, Mark? That would be exhausting if that's how you decide where you're going to live based on where the election went last time. Second of all, I lived in America proudly for 8 years, and my guy didn't win. Barack Obama was president, so let's not go to that extreme of if I don't get my way, I'm going to move somewhere. But here's what I'll say. You guys keep going and fighting over recounts. Keep giving lawyers, the Democratic lawyers, a ton of money, millions of dollars for all this legal stuff while they get rich. And as you would say, the poor get poor when they send in their checks to fight this. And we're going to get ready to run the United States of America, the government, and that's what Donald Trump's going to be focused on.
All right, I want to move on to something else because there is a lot to discuss. That, of course, is one issue being discussed. The other one is the infighting over the possibility of Mitt Romney for Secretary of State. What do you think, Ben? Do you think that Donald Trump is seriously considering Mitt Romney, or could this be him simply wanting to make an adversary sort of grovel before saying no? What's your take on this?
Look, I'll be honest with you. I think only Donald Trump can answer that question. I do think, based on what Donald Trump has done so far, his intentions with everybody he has met with have been very authentic. Putting Nikki Haley in a position after she was very critical of him, and I think is a perfect example of that, of the proof. And I think what Donald Trump has pretty much said is, look, if you are qualified, I want to interview you. If you are somebody that is a top person, even if you are critical of me, I'm going to work with you. The same reason why I put Rance Priebus as chief of staff, the same reason why he worked with Paul Ryan and made sure that he was going to still be the speaker even after they didn't even campaign together. He let it go and moved on. So I do think there is one issue here. The Republicans that support him early on, the people that sat in line for 5 hours to go to his rally or 6 hours, they said drain the swamp. And Mitt Romney is not draining the swamp. And they do not feel that he is a hardcore conservative. He is part of the establishment. He is a rhino, Republican in name only, and they don't want him anywhere close to a Trump White House for that specific reason. And I think they have a very legitimate argument that they're making over it.
Do you agree, Mark?
Well, I think Mitt Romney certainly is not a dyed-in-the-wool right-wing extremist Republican, but I think he's a Republican. There's some irony in Donald Trump suggesting that someone's not Republican enough when Donald Trump is all over the ideological map. And I think it would be you'd be hard-pressed to say that he is a legitimate Republican if we're basing on a very narrow set of standards. But I think there's a bigger question here. Mitt Romney didn't just not fall in line with Donald Trump. He wasn't just critical of Donald Trump. He said he was a fraud. He said he was a sham. He said that he wasn't a legitimate candidate, that he was below the dignity of the office of president, and that he would be a disaster on the international stage. So then for Mitt Romney to step in and decide that he'd want to be Secretary of State, to me, is sort of a bizarre choice if he believes that Donald Trump would actually be in.
And let me just ask you this, Ben. I really want to get your reaction before we have to wrap up this segment to Kellyanne Conway sort of coming out and speaking out against Mitt Romney as a potential Secretary of State. What do you make of that? Anna Navarro, who is not a fan of Donald Trump, suggested that perhaps Trump might be orchestrating this. What is your take?
Look, Anna Navarro, I'm pretty sure she said she voted for Hillary Clinton, so I'll say what she's saying about Donald Trump with a massive grain of salt, with all due respect, Anna. What I will say is I think what you're seeing here from Kellyanne Conway is she has a very close ear to the people and the constituents and those that came out for Donald Trump, and she does not want to let them down, and she understands that if you do put Mitt Romney in there, it may not outweigh the negative, which is that people feel like that you took advantage of them and you didn't do what you said you were going to do, which is drain the swamp. Let's also remember this about Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney's biggest speech that he's given the last 4 years was a 40-minute diatribe of why Donald Trump sucks. Why would you give that guy this job? The second biggest speech he's given the last 4 years was his concession speech to Barack Obama. So this is somebody that I just don't really think you need in this administration. In my opinion, I think there's other people as qualified as him, and I hope Donald Trump will look around a little bit.
All right. Well, we know he has lots of meetings tomorrow, a lot of anticipation for more announcements to come in his cabinet in Ferguson. Mark Lamont Hill certainly will be a busy week for all of us. Thank you so much.